On a Saturday morning in a driveway somewhere in America right now, a young man is lying on a piece of cardboard under a 15-year-old car, changing his own oil for the first time, with a phone propped on the tire playing a video made by a stranger. He is nervous. He has never done this, and what he does not know is that he is not learning something new. He is reaching back across 60 years and a whole lost way of living for something his grandfather's generation knew the way they knew their own names, because in a small garage in Galesburg, Illinois, in 1964, a mechanic did every one of the things that young man is about to teach himself off a telephone, and he did them without thinking, because that was simply how you kept a car. That mechanic has been gone a long time, but his habits are coming back, quietly, in driveways like that one, and the drivers bringing them back are saving thousands of dollars a year doing it. There is one habit underneath all the others that saves the most, and we will come to it. First, understand why this is happening at all. It is happening because the math finally broke. The average car on an American road today is older than it has ever been in the history of the automobile. Not 8 years, not 10, 12.8 years on average, and for passenger cars specifically closer to 14.5, and that number has risen for 8 straight years to set record after record. There are 289 million vehicles on the road, and more of them than ever are what the industry quietly calls the sweet spot, the cars between 6 and 14 years old that a previous generation would have already traded away. People are not keeping these cars because they love them. They are keeping them because the alternative has become impossible, and in keeping them, they are being forced to relearn how to take care of them. And this is not a small or passing thing. Passenger cars on American roads recently dropped below 100 million for the first time since the 1970s, not because there are fewer of them being driven, but because the ones already out there are being kept so much longer. The scrappage rate, the measure of how many cars finally leave the road for good each year, has held low and steady, which is another way of saying that cars which a generation ago would have been crushed are instead sitting in driveways, running, being nursed along by owners who have decided that a car with a good engine and 200,000 miles on it is an asset to be defended, not an embarrassment to be traded. That decision, multiplied across a whole country, is the quiet revolution underneath all of this. Look at what the alternative costs now, and the whole thing snaps into focus. Owning a new car in this country runs, on average, better than $11,500 a year, close to $1,000 a month, once you count everything. The average payment on a new car has climbed past $740 a month by itself. And the single largest cost, the one almost nobody sees, is not the payment or the gas or the insurance. It is depreciation, the value the car quietly bleeds while it sits in your driveway, and it averages more than $4,300 a year on a new car. That is the number that changes everything, and it is the number the Galesburg mechanic understood in his bones without ever using the word. Because here is what he knew, the thing the young man under the car is about to rediscover. A car is not a payment you renew. It is a machine you understand and keep. The Galesburg mechanic kept cars alive for 15 and 20 years in a town where a factory wage did not stretch far, and he did it because in 1964 there was no other option that made sense. You did not trade a running car. You fixed it, you maintained it, you caught its troubles early, and you drove it until it truly could not go another mile, because the man who did that kept his money, and the man who chased a new car every few years stayed poor. That was not nostalgia. It was arithmetic, and the arithmetic has come all the way back around. The first habit coming back is the simplest, and it is the one that saves the most, though we are saving its full weight for the end. It is this: keep the car you already have, and keep it well. A paid-off car that runs is the cheapest transportation in America, and it is not close. When the payment is gone and the steepest years of depreciation are behind it, a well-kept older car costs a fraction of a new one to own, mostly just maintenance and fuel and insurance. The studies bear it out plainly. The upkeep on a paid-off vehicle runs somewhere around $1,500 to $2,000 a year, against better than $10,000 for a new one. The Galesburg mechanic drove the same truck for the better part of 30 years, and he was not being cheap. He was being smart, and everyone in that town who watched their money go to a lender instead of into their own pocket eventually understood he had been right. Understand how depreciation actually works, because it is the whole reason keeping a car wins. A new car loses something like 15 to 20% of its value the moment it is driven off the lot and in its first year, and then close to 15% a year for several years after that. The steepest part of that fall happens early, in the first years of the car's life, which are precisely the years a new car buyer owns it. By the time a car is 8 or 10 years old, that brutal early plunge is finished, and the car has reached a long, gentle plateau where it loses very little value each year while a sound engine keeps it running just fine. The person who buys new eats the plunge over and over every few years. The person who keeps an older car has already paid that price once and never pays it again. And the difference is thousands of dollars a year that the Galesburg mechanic simply kept in his pocket. He let other men buy the plunge. He bought the plateau. Even the people who measure these costs for the industry have started saying it out loud. When the annual ownership figures dipped slightly in a recent year, the researcher who compiles them warned that it might tempt people to rush back to the dealer for something new, and that the temptation was worth resisting once you saw the full picture. That is a remarkable thing to hear from inside the business, and it is the Galesburg mechanic's whole philosophy stated in modern terms. The monthly payment is only ever a fraction of what a new car truly costs, and the largest costs are the invisible ones that never send a bill. A driver who keeps a good car sidesteps nearly all of them at once, which is why keeping the car is not a compromise or a hardship. It is, quietly, the single best financial decision most drivers will ever make about a car, and almost no one makes it on purpose.
Before we go on, I made something special for you. A guide for men like us, who still believe a man should be able to keep his own car running. It's the Forgotten Mechanic's Handbook, the old-fashioned car repair secrets our grandfathers used to fix any engine and keep it running for decades. But these skills are disappearing fast, and once they're gone for good. Don't pay another mechanic ever again. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link below. Go ahead, I'll wait right here.
The second habit is the one that young man is practicing on his back in the driveway, and it is coming back fast, doing the simple maintenance yourself, not the complicated work. The simple, repeated, marked-up work that a shop charges 3 and 4 times the cost of the materials to perform. An oil and filter change, an air filter, wiper blades, a battery, brake pads on a weekend afternoon. None of it is difficult. All of it is on a video now. And every job a person does themselves is shop labor that stays in their pocket. The Galesburg mechanic taught the boy who swept his floor to change oil before he taught him anything else, because he believed a man who could do his own simple maintenance had taken the first real step toward keeping his money. A generation raised to think of a car as a sealed box they were not allowed to open is, one driveway at a time, opening the box again. The savings on the simple work are not small when you tally them across a year. An oil change, a shop charges $60 or $80 for costs a person doing it themselves. The price of the oil and the filter, perhaps a third of that, and over several changes a year, the difference adds up quietly. A set of brake pads, a shop bills, hundreds in labor to install is a couple of hours, and the cost of the parts in a home driveway. Wiper blades, air filters, a battery, cabin filters, a headlight bulb, all of it carries a labor charge at a shop that vanishes the moment you do it with your own hands. None of these jobs asks for talent, only for a person willing to put their hands on the machine once and learn it. And there is a second, quieter return on doing them yourself, the one the Galesburg mechanic prized most. The man who changes his own oil has his hands and his eyes on the underside of his car several times a year, and he sees the fresh leak, the worn bushing, the cracked boot, months before it would ever have announced itself. The doing of the small job is also the finding of the large one. The third habit is quieter and older than either, and it is the true engine underneath all of them: attention. The Galesburg mechanic did not wait for a car to break. He listened to it. He watched the ground under it for a fresh drip. He ran a hand over a tire. He noticed the new sound the day it appeared, instead of the day it stranded him. He understood that nearly every expensive failure on a car begins as a small, cheap, early warning that a person paying attention can catch while it is still small and cheap. A weep of oil is a $2 seal today and a seized engine next month. A new noise is a $10 part this week and a whole assembly if you drive it another year. The drivers bringing this back are relearning to hear their cars, to walk around them once in a while and look, because the attention costs nothing, and it is worth more than any tool in the box. What that attention looks like in practice is plain and old. It is checking the fluids and topping them before they run a system dry, because a low fluid does its damage silently, and the part that runs dry is never the cheap one. It is keeping an eye on the belts and hoses and replacing a $5 part in the driveway before it lets go on the highway and takes an overheated engine with it. It is checking the tire pressure with a gauge which saves fuel and rubber both. It is servicing the fluids everyone forgets, the transmission and the coolant on schedule, because a burnt transmission or a corroded cooling system is among the most expensive ways an engine dies and among the most preventable. The Galesburg mechanic did every one of these as a matter of course, not because any one of them was dramatic, but because together they were the difference between a car that reached 200,000 miles and a car that died at 90 with a good body and a ruined engine. Here is the part of his story worth telling because it is the reason his habits were built to last. The Galesburg mechanic did not invent any of this. He learned it as a boy during years when throwing anything away was unthinkable, from men who had kept machines alive through a depression and a war because there was no money and no new part to be had. That generation did not maintain their cars because a manual told them to. They maintained them because a broken machine you could not fix was a genuine disaster, and out of that hard necessity they built a discipline so deep it became invisible, a way of tending a machine that they passed to their sons in the doing of it, never in a lecture. Then the country got rich, and cars got cheap to replace, and for 2 generations we simply let the discipline go, because we could afford to forget it. What is happening now is that we can no longer afford to, and the knowledge is being reassembled from the ground up, off telephones and forums, and the faded memory of a grandfather's hands. The Galesburg mechanic used to say that the men who taught him could fix a thing 3 ways before breakfast, not because they were geniuses, but because they had never once been allowed the luxury of giving up on a machine. He kept a coffee can of salvaged bolts and another of good used parts, because in the world that raised him, you did not buy what you could save. He rebuilt a starter with new brushes instead of buying a new one, resealed a pump instead of scrapping it, and turned away more than one customer who wanted to replace a part he could see with his own eyes was still good. His hands had done these things so many times that he no longer had to think about them, and that was exactly the tragedy of losing him, because a skill that lives in the hands and not in a book is the easiest kind to lose and the hardest to get back. It disappears the moment the last pair of hands that held it goes still. There was a woman in that town who came in convinced she needed a new car because hers had begun to shudder, and a lot down the road had told her it was tired and not worth fixing. The Galesburg mechanic drove it around the block, listened, put it up on the lift, and found a single worn part worth a few dollars and an afternoon of his time. He fixed it, charged her for the part and the hour, and told her the car had another decade in it if she would let him look after it. She drove it 11 more years. That was the whole of his trade, and it is the whole of what is coming back now. The simple, radical idea that a machine making a noise is usually asking for a small repair, not begging to be replaced, and that the person who knows the difference keeps a fortune over a lifetime that the person who does not simply hands away. The fourth habit coming back is the one the industry likes least, and it is a matter of simple refusal, declining the service you do not need. The Galesburg mechanic told his customers plainly when something could wait, and he never invented work, and his reward was a town that trusted him for 30 years. The drivers relearning his ways are relearning to read the maintenance schedule printed in their own owner's manual, the real one, and to say no to the flushes and treatments and premature replacements pushed at every visit, whether the car needs them or not. This is where an old habit meets a modern fact, and it is worth saying plainly. The famous 3,000-mile oil change, pushed for decades, is largely obsolete on a modern car with modern oil, most of which will go far longer. Bringing back the 60s does not mean bringing back its mistakes. It means bringing back the judgment to know what your car actually needs, which is very often far less than you are being sold. And that points to the honest heart of this, the thing that separates the smart driver from the merely nostalgic one. A modern car is not a 1964 car, and pretending otherwise will cost you. The engine bay of a new car is a sealed, computer-managed place, and some of what the Galesburg mechanic did with a screwdriver and his ears now genuinely requires a scan tool and training. Some systems are not meant to be opened by hand, and forcing them does damage. The point of bringing back the old habits was never to blindly copy a mechanic who worked on points and carburetors. It is to bring back his mindset, the attention and the prevention, and the refusal to replace what can be kept, and to apply that mindset intelligently to a machine he would not entirely recognize. The smart driver does his own oil and brakes and knows when a fault needs a professional and a computer. He is not fighting the modern car. He is refusing to be helpless in front of it. Drawing that line well is the whole skill now. The oil, the filters, the brakes, the wiper blades, the battery, the cabin and air filters, the spark plugs on many engines, the tire care, the fluid checks, all of this remains squarely in the reach of an ordinary person with a few tools and a video. What has moved out of easy reach is the deep electronic diagnosis, the sealed transmissions some makers no longer even fit with a dipstick, the systems that throw a code only a scan tool can read, and the high-voltage systems on hybrids and electrics that are genuinely dangerous to the untrained. The smart driver learns where that line falls on his own car and respects it. He does the simple work himself and keeps his money. And when the engine light means something he cannot see, he pays a professional gladly. because knowing when to call the expert is itself part of the old wisdom, not a betrayal of it. The Galesburg mechanic never pretended to do work he could not do well. He just made sure the list of what an owner could do well stayed as long as it honestly could. There is a larger fight tangled up in this, and it is worth knowing about, because it is the reason some of these habits are harder than they should be. As cars have filled with software, some manufacturers have made it steadily harder for an ordinary owner or an independent shop to get the tools, the codes, and the information needed to do their own repairs, steering that work back toward the dealer. It is the reason a right to repair movement has grown up in state after state, with voters backing it overwhelmingly wherever they have been asked, fighting to keep the owner's ability to fix the thing he owns. The drivers bringing back the old self-reliance are, whether they mean to or not, part of that fight, because every one of them who insists on understanding and keeping his own car is pushing back against a future where you are only ever renting the right to be driven around in one. This is not abstract. When Massachusetts voters were asked in 2020 to require car makers to share the diagnostic data an independent shop needs, they passed it by a landslide of roughly 3-4 over one of the most expensive ballot measure fights in the state's history, and the automakers sued within weeks to stop it. When Maine voters were asked a similar question in 2023, they backed it by an even wider margin. Federal regulators and other states have taken up the same cause. The industry makes its arguments about security and safety and complexity, and some of them are fair and worth weighing. But underneath the legal fight sits the same simple question the Galesburg mechanic would have understood instantly. When you buy a machine, do you own it with the right to understand and repair it, or do you merely hold a license to use it on the maker's terms? The generation keeping its cars longer is answering that question with its wrenches. If any of this stirs something in you, that instinct that you would rather understand your car than be afraid of it, that is exactly the instinct this whole movement is built on. Hit that subscribe button, and then go look at the car in your own driveway a little differently than you did this morning. So bring it together the way that mechanic would have. Add up what these habits are actually worth in a year, honestly, without inventing a number. The simple maintenance you do yourself saves you hundreds in shop labor. The services you learn to decline save you hundreds more. The small troubles you catch early save you from the large repairs that would have come. And then, towering over all of it, is the one we saved for last, the habit underneath every other habit, the one that saves the most by far. Keeping a good car alive and out of the trade-in line so that you are not surrendering more than $4,000 a year to depreciation and another $1,000 in finance charges on a machine that is losing value while it sleeps. That single habit, keeping the car you have, is worth more than all the others combined, and stacked with the rest, it clears $3,000 a year without strain, and for many households a great deal more. That is not a promise printed on a study. It is arithmetic, the same arithmetic the Galesburg mechanic did on the back of a work order 60 years ago. None of this was ever really about oil or filters or brake pads. It was about a way of seeing a machine and a way of refusing to be poor for no reason. The Galesburg mechanic saw a car as a thing to be understood and kept, and the generation that is bringing his habits back is arriving, out of hard necessity and a phone full of videos, at the exact place he stood in 1964. They are keeping their cars longer than any generation in memory. They are opening the box again. They are learning to listen, and they are saving thousands of dollars a year doing what he did without a second thought. We did not lose these habits because they stopped working. Every one of them still works, today, on the car in your driveway, and together they are worth more money than most people will ever be handed anywhere else. We lost them because for a little while we got rich enough to forget them, and now we are remembering one cardboard and driveway Saturday at a time. The young man rolls out from under the car with oil on his hands and a used filter in his fist, and he does not know it, but he has just joined a line of people that runs straight back through his grandfather to a mechanic in Galesburg who would have looked at him and nodded and said he was finally learning. Check the car, keep the car, understand the car. It is the oldest way there is, and it is the smart thing a driver can do today, and it never once stopped being true.